What's up, Alabama fans? It's Andrew Bone with BamaInsider.com. Wanted to do a little update this evening prior to the NFL draft. I wanted to talk about the NFL draft eligible players that are going out tomorrow and this weekend for the Crimson Tide. As you guys know, I've covered recruiting since 2003, and wanted to talk about all the guys that I've covered that are going out this year. And we'll kind of start with the 2017 class. Now, just kind of a reminder, this evening, not going to talk really any recruiting. Not going to talk about this 2021 class, the three guys that are committed, or anything like that. I'm going to talk strictly about the NFL draft guys. Just kind of a walk down memory lane, talk about their recruitment, what I remember the most, and I hope you guys enjoy it. These guys were fun to cover throughout their high school days, and I think Alabama fans are going to be extremely excited this weekend, especially with all the guys that are going to be drafted in the first round tomorrow night. So first off, let's talk about Tua. In that 2017 recruiting class, obviously, one of Coach Saban's best classes at Alabama. He was recruited by Tosh Lapoy, by Lane Kiffin. I think the biggest thing about their recruitment is definitely Jake Fromm's flip. The way that he was able to flip from Alabama to Georgia, and then we end up seeing Alabama really turn up the heat on Tua and get him on board. I think that was kind of the biggest thing there. We saw Tua end up visiting Alabama in the spring. That was a humongous visit because his whole family came with him. They loved Tuscaloosa. They loved the culture. They loved, being able to go to church. And, they really liked that a lot. That's what really kind of, separated Alabama from some of the other schools that recruited him. USC, Oregon, those were some of the schools that were on his list very early in the process. And he ends up signing with the Crimson Tide. So, once he made that visit, I think it was, I can't remember if it was either March or April, then ended up committing, I believe, sometime in May. After that visit, it was all Alabama ever since then. So Jake Fromm flipping from from Alabama to Georgia after Kirby Smart ends up leaving and becoming the head coach at Georgia. Ends up Alabama wins the Tua sweepstakes. All right, let's move on. Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy was a 5-star recruit in that 2017 class. Big time player. I remember having an opportunity to see him at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, and I thought to myself, this kid is so far advanced as a route runner. He's going to be a spectacular football player. He was a little undersized. I think he was he was only about 165, 170 pounds. I mean, he was pretty thin, right before his senior season at Deerfield Beach. But I think the biggest thing I remember about Jeudy is he committed to Alabama in July before his senior season, and then all of a sudden, was pretty solid throughout the whole recruiting process. But then about a week or two before, I guess before the dead period hit, he ends up taking a visit to Miami. There was a lot of speculation that he was going to flip to Miami. They were really coming after him pretty strong, but he ends up sticking with Alabama. I think one of the biggest reasons because of that was Calvin Ridley. But what many people don't remember is Calvin Ridley was actually they lived together in high school. So you had Calvin Ridley, Riley Ridley, Calvin's younger brother, and Jerry Jeudy, all living together, all on the same team, all receivers. I mean, now you're gonna have 3 guys that are all in the NFL. They were all on the same high school team, all living under the same roof. But obviously, he had an unbelievable career with the Crimson Tide. Jedrick Wills. Jedrick Wills out of Kentucky, Lexington. I remember seeing him at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, thinking just this guy's an absolute beast. He's definitely one of the top offensive linemen that I've seen throughout several years, and he was just mauling people. I thought he would have an excellent career as an offensive tackle, wherever that may be. Now at the time, really wasn't thinking Alabama. I was thinking he was going to end up going elsewhere. Now I know he had Alabama in his top 10 at the time, but really didn't think that Alabama stood much of a chance. Well, as the summer months kind of went on, started hearing more about Alabama. They were really involved with him. And then I think it was right before his senior season. So around August, he had set a commitment date, and everybody knew it was going to be Alabama. Well, then he decided to hold off, and everybody started thinking, okay, well, maybe the hometown pressure was getting to him that he was going to stay, in Lexington, end up going to Kentucky, but I think around November ends up sticking with not sticking, but announcing for Alabama, what we all thought, and obviously he had an All-American career with Alabama. The next guy I wanted to talk about real quick, and a lot of these are just quick little blurbs. I'm not really going in depth or anything like this. This isn't going to be a 45-minute, hour-long discussion tonight. I just wanted to jump on here, kind of reminisce about some of these guys as recruits, since this weekend's such a meaningful weekend for them and their families, and obviously with Alabama fans and coaches. So just going to kind of reminisce about them real quick. Xavier Mckinney. This is another big-time player that was in that 2017 recruiting class for Alabama. He was a member of the Rivals 100. I think he was number 40 overall in the Rivals 100, so he's a big-time recruit, had a lot of attention. Now, one of the things about Xavier McKinney is, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but he actually committed to Alabama prior to his junior season. He's committed all year long. Then he ends up decommitting. I think it was in the summer, and it decommits in the summer. A lot of people assume, if you commit to a school, then decommit, there's no chance that you're going to come back. And we've seen that, several times, but we also started to see that with Alabama. We saw that, last year or 2 years ago, Trey Sanders, Evan Neal. Those were two guys that were originally committed to Alabama, decommitted, kind of went through their whole recruiting process and then end up back at Alabama. Well, Xavier McKinney was one of those guys who ends up committing early, decommits, and then recommits to Alabama. Now, there was a lot of speculation that it was going to be Clemson. Clemson and Georgia were all over him. I mean, they were heavily recruiting him, heavily pursuing him. And then, we all thought he was going to Clemson. I think Alabama coaches all thought he was going to Clemson. Then he announced at the Under Armour All-America game and said, "I'm committed back to Alabama." So I thought that was a huge win for the Crimson Tide. Obviously, Derek Ansley, who was the defensive backs coach at the time, did a tremendous job recruiting him. Coach Saban also played a major role in his recruitment. Henry Ruggs, people probably won't believe me, but I used to call our national guys, our regional guys, and I said, Henry Ruggs is so underrated, and they didn't believe me. A lot of them just think, when we say a kid's underrated, if he's an Alabama kid, from the state of Alabama, if he's committed to Alabama, that we're just saying it because it's because that's the team we cover. Henry Ruggs was not that way. Henry Ruggs was a special talent, and I remember seeing him, during his senior season, and thinking, this is one of the fastest guys that I've ever seen in my life. Clearly, but he was one of those kids who got an offer really early from Alabama. Got an offer, I want to say midway through his junior season, and I think ever since he got that offer, everyone assumed he was going to Alabama. And just the entire process. And everybody kept waiting. When's he going to commit? When's he going to commit? Well, I kept being told that he was a private commitment. I don't know if Henry's ever said that out loud, if he was private commitment or not, but I was told for months that he had privately committed to Alabama. Well, probably about, I would say, 24 hours from National Signing Day during his senior year, Alabama, I heard, was in a panic, thinking that he wasn't going to go to Alabama anymore. And then probably, I would say that evening, right before signing day, I was told that they had, kind of, gotten back in it. They felt pretty good about it. And then obviously on signing day, he announced. So you just never know how recruiting may go. A kid may say he's a private commitment for 8 months and then goes elsewhere. So we see that plenty of times. And so you just never know how recruiting may go. But, Henry Rose was a tremendous basketball player. Nobody really knew about him until his junior season, but really exploded during his junior season, his senior season. And I thought he was extremely underrated, coming out. I thought he was a 5-star recruit. I was trying to press for him that. I don't even think I got him in the Rivals 100, but I was saying this kid is a 5-star. He is a top 2 player in the state of Alabama during his senior year. And for some reason, nobody would believe me. But I've gotten him right before. I've gotten him wrong before. So I'm not tooting my own horn at all there, because I sure have missed on some guys before in terms of, trying to prop them up to be a 5-star, or even some that we said, hey, they're 3 stars, and they end up being a first-round NFL draft pick. All right, who else are we talking about? Let's so those are kind of my guys that I wanted to talk about in the 2017 recruiting class. I'm going to move on to the 2016 recruiting class, and there's a lot of guys in that 2016 class that are going to be drafted this weekend. We'll start off with Terrell Lewis. Back in the day, he was Terrell Hall before he changed his name. 5-star recruit out of Maryland. Alabama. Really hitting on all cylinders in that DMV area the last several years. He made that decision on National Signing Day. One thing that really stood out about his decision, and I kind of looked back and read some things, from some of my stories that I wrote back then. He said one of his biggest reasons for committing to Alabama was because of Deshaun Hand. Seeing a guy from that area, a big name recruit that he was friends with, that he knew about, committed to Alabama and went down to Alabama, had success, and that was kind of the reason he did. So I think that really helps with other kids in certain parts of the country. We see kids that come to Alabama from California, and more kids from California come to Alabama. Kids from South Florida who have a lot of success. Probably because of Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, those type of things. So I think the more kids see other kids have success from their area, from their high schools growing up at other schools, it certainly builds a pipeline to those universities. And Alabama's been very successful in that regard. But Terrell Lewis, he was actually originally committed to Ohio State. A lot of people probably don't know that, but it was very, very early commitment to Ohio State. Backed off that pledge, started taking visits. Alabama was kind of right there in the mix for a long time. Maryland, Ohio State was still in it. I think Florida State was very high on his list. Ole Miss was even on his list. So, those are some schools that he was, really interested in. Took a late visit to Alabama in January, and then ends up announcing for Alabama on National Signing Day. Another kid in that area that Alabama landed that year was Trayvon Diggs. Obviously, people knew about him because of his older brother, Stephon Diggs, who's now with the Buffalo Bills. One thing I didn't realize until I started doing a little bit of research today, just kind of trying to remember some of these things. I didn't realize that he was such close friends with Dewayne Haskins. Dewayne Haskins, obviously, people know about him, quarterback for the Washington Redskins, had originally committed to Maryland. Coach Randy Edsall, offense coordinator Michael Oxley, got an early commitment from Dewayne Haskins. Well, Haskins, that coaching staff ends up getting fired. Haskins ends up starting to take visits and ends up obviously flipping to Ohio State. But there was a point where Trayvon Diggs, did an interview and said that he was most likely going to Maryland to play with his friend Dewayne Haskins. I really didn't realize that until I went back and looked. I kind of had remembered, back in, I think it was the summer months when he had visited Alabama. He'd visited Alabama a couple times, and it said they were, his leader. But before that, Maryland was kind of in the driver's seat for him. But obviously we know what happened with him. He was recruited more as an athlete. People weren't really sure what position he was going to play. Was he going to be a receiver? Was he going to be a defensive back? And obviously, he had a great career at Alabama. Moving on, talk about Raekwon Davis from Meridian High School. I remember when Raekwon committed to Alabama. It was a little bit before his senior season, and I remember one of our video guys went back and started watching all of Raekwon Davis's junior season and trying to get some highlights put together so they could put a highlight film out for him. And there just weren't any highlights at all. I don't know if he just had an off year or a bad year or was injured during his junior year. I mean, he played, but he just didn't have a lot of stats. He was just this massive human being out on the field. And, he really kind of turned it around during his senior season. Had a great senior season. Then he showed up at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, and everybody's like, who in the heck is this guy? And he just had a dominating week. And I think the biggest thing I remember about his recruitment was I think it was around January 17th, 18th, something like that. Well, a story came out that said he had flipped to Mississippi State. He had taken an official visit to Mississippi State and flipped. Well, there was never, a post by him. There was never an interview done by, nobody had done any interviews. It was just everybody was reporting that he had flipped from Mississippi State or from Alabama to Mississippi State. Well, he finally came out and said that wasn't true. It hadn't happened. That he was still fully committed to Alabama. Alabama kind of weathered the storm there. Tosh Lapoy, Bo Davis, former defensive line coach, they did a really good job. Even if he did commit, maybe it was private, maybe he didn't want it out, and whatever happened in terms of his potential commitment or flip to Mississippi State. Alabama was able to reel him back in regardless, and ends up keeping him on board. All right. Jerrod Maiden, you just don't know where some of these guys are going to end up getting drafted. You think that some of them are going to get drafted here in the next couple days, but I wanted to mention kind of everybody that I felt like has a good chance to get drafted over the course of the next couple days. But Jerrod Maiden, out of Texas, was originally committed to Oregon. I don't know if many people remember that, but originally committed to Oregon. Well, shortly before his commitment to Oregon, he actually got an offer from Georgia, and was really interested in Georgia. Jeremy Pruitt was the defensive coordinator for the Bulldogs at the time, and after his senior season, he ends up deciding that he's going to take a couple of official visits. Well, he ends up taking visits to Alabama and Oklahoma. Jeremy Pruitt had become the defensive coordinator at Alabama at the time, so Alabama was able to win him over, get him on board, get a big commitment, from the state of Texas. And then another guy in that 2016 recruiting class, Shaheem Carter out of Kentwood High School in Louisiana. Shaheem actually committed to Alabama very early in his, I think it was before his junior season. He committed to Alabama, went to Alabama's camp after his sophomore year, balled out, got an offer. Then about a month later, ends up committing to Alabama. Well, a lot of attention, a lot of schools still coming after him. LSU, Ole Miss, Auburn, Miami, a lot of programs heavily recruiting him, and he ends up decommitting from Alabama. I think right before his senior season. Then ends up taking official visits, I believe in January, Alabama, Ole Miss, Miami. On National Signing Day, a lot of people thought he was going to Ole Miss, but he ends up at Alabama. So, another big win for Alabama in the state of Louisiana. And I think the final guy we're going to talk about is Anthony Jennings. Now, Anthony was in the 2015 recruiting class, so he's the only guy that's going out in the draft this year from that 2015 class. Now, 2015 class, pretty good class. Minka Fitzpatrick, Calvin Ridley, Damian Harris, Ronnie Harrison. I mean, that was a really good recruiting class. Anthony Jennings was, one of those guys that committed early, committed in March to Alabama. Never really wavered. He had a ton of offers: Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, LSU. A lot of top programs that had offered him, and he pretty much knew early on from Dadeville High School in Alabama. Committed early. I remember going and seeing him as during his senior season, was very impressed with him. And then, it seemed like he turned it up another level when we saw him at the Alabama Mississippi All-Star game. But nothing too crazy about his recruitment. Just kind of cut and dry. Got that offer from Alabama, committed. Didn't really take any other visits, and that was kind of it. I think we pretty much went over it. All these guys that are projected to go in the NFL draft this week. Hope you all enjoyed the show tonight. I'm gonna scroll through here to see if there's any questions regarding the draft, guys. I'm telling you, I'm not gonna do any special recruiting questions this evening. It's just straight up NFL draft. Hope you guys understand. So let me scroll through here to see if there's any questions. Let's see. What team is Ruggs signing with? Best guess. I think everybody keeps saying the San Francisco 49ers. That's like every mock draft that I see. So, I haven't done a mock draft. I probably should, just for the fun of it. But man, I see someone said Ruggs is going to Kansas City or the Giants. Kansas City, that would be fun to watch. Him with Mahomes and all those guys. Do I think Tua will go to the Patriots like the buzz is saying? Yeah, obviously, I think we're all in agreement. I don't think it's just my opinion that I think Tua is going to have to, or the Patriots are going to have to trade up big time to get him. I'd be shocked if Tua doesn't go into in the top 10. I mean, I already think I'm about to say some programs, some of these franchises are a little silly not taking him. Thinking of some other quarterbacks ahead of him, but he would certainly be at the top of my list. I mean, fully healthy Tua, I don't think you can beat him. Let's see. Sorry, guys. A lot of I guess just a lot of comments more than anything else. All right, I think that's going to be it for the evening, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Really enjoyed watching these guys develop. Obviously, we rank them in high school, kind of see how they develop over the course of the next 3 to 4 years. So it was fun to kind of watch how they progress. And, obviously, a lot of them had a lot of success, and they're going to continue to have success at the next level. Hope you all enjoy the NFL draft tomorrow. Hope you all still staying safe, social distancing, and really excited about I guess when everything returns to normal. Thanks for joining this evening. I hope you all stay safe and have a good weekend. Thanks.